President Muhammad Buhari, in a nationwide address on Wednesday, gave approval to the CBN that the old 200 naira banknotes be released back into circulation to further ease the supply pressures, particularly to Nigerians, and that it should also be allowed to circulate as legal tender with the new 200, 500 and 1,000 naira banknotes for 60 days from February 10, 2023 to April 10, 2023, when the old 200 naira note ceases to be legal tender. The president also added that in line with Section 20, subsection 3 of the CBN Act 2007, all existing old 1,000 naira and 500 naira notes remain redeemable at the CBN and designated points, and admonished every citizen to strive harder to make their deposits by taking advantage of the platforms and windows being provided by the CBN. Nigerians are beginning to cope with the new directive while dealing with interim challenges posed by the new cashless policy. What is the implication of this on our economy? What more should be done to ease this tension? These and more questions will be the focus of our discussion tonight by our guests in a moment. Welcome to Nigeria Today. I am your carrier, Clinton. Joining me to provide more insight is Dr. Tochukwu Okafor, a senior lecturer at Bayes University, Abuja, and also an economic analyst. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure being here.
And also, we are expecting from Ilesha, Osun State, Olusegun Uduyebo, a public affairs analyst, will be joining us shortly via Zoom. But I will start with you, Dr. Tochukwu. How has it been? Do you have the 200 naira notes?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Have you seen the old one? Have you been able to access the cash?
Well, actually, I have not been able to access cash. I only saw this one today, actually, for the first time. But the truth about it is, like we discussed earlier, the decision by the CBN was more or less an impromptu one that came about as a result of...
Before you go, you start off. The last time you were on the program, you commended the CBN for the move to strengthen the economy, talking about the cashless policy.
Exactly.
Do you still stand on that position?
Yes, and if you recall, I told you, good intentions, bad execution. While I was commending it, if they had stuck to their guns to 31st, probably we won't be in this mess. But that extension actually is the major cause of this crisis we are facing. And if you also recall, I told you that the second problem is while they were doing that, they did not make remedial measures for the crisis. Take, for instance, the ATMs, the online transactions. They didn't even make provisions to see what the surge in those departments are going to look like. They just made it like, hey, we are going to do this with the old form of doing business. Okay, and the online transactions, we have not looked at whether internet is even sufficient in some areas or whether the e-payments are actually adequate. They just made those decisions. Now, that decision they made at that point in time without making infrastructure to actually augment for whatever decision was where my major problem was. And that's why I said good intentions, bad execution, because at the end of the day, if they had made provisions in December, probably before January, we won't be in this crisis where ATMs are full, bank apps, you try to transfer, it hangs. Some people have transferred as much as 700 to 1 million and it has been hanging, and there's been debate all around and in the banks. So if they had not, if these channels were open and good, at least the trust deficits with those that are unbanked would have been lesser than what we have now. You have the more unbanked people wanting to come to this platform because they see it's working. Everybody likes work is working. But right now, when you hear someone saying, I've lost 700 and something thousand hanging in the air with some banks, the person that has only 20,000, that is the only thing the person has, the person will not want to risk going into this kind of platforms. So that is the crisis that is circumnavigating. We have trust deficits, we have panic, we have chaos. And secondly, I would like to even dive into the aspect of the CBN putting the cart before the horse, right? The major problem right now, if we're going to give advice for the incumbents and those that are coming into power very soon, the major problem is the informal sector, right? I mean, we have more than 70% of the informal sector actually running the economy. And let's just face it the way it is, even though they are not accounted for, but they're crux of the people that run the economy. And that's why you notice that even we that could rely on online transactions still need cash, because those are the people that do the car washing for us, the vulcanizers, the cleaners. These are the people we meet in our daily lives. And the reason why these people are doing this is because the system couldn't give them employment. So they are creating their own employment outside the system. And when they are creating their own employment, like I said the last time, the problem is nobody trusts the banking system, so they start keeping cash at home. So by the time you pay these people and they're unbanked, which they're your daily workers, they keep storing and storing. And when you don't pay them, they revolt, which is what we're experiencing now. And when they revolt, the system eventually has to submit to their request, and you start giving the money again, and then we still get hoarding and hoarding and hoarding, because right now I can bet you if I pull out a 200 naira bill here, it is even more valuable than the amount someone has in there, because everybody needs on the go payments. So right now everybody is looking for the on the go payment, but the on the go payment is going to make people keep hoarding, and in less than, like I said last time, medium term we'll be back to this same crisis where we have more money outside the system than the money inside the system. So the monetary policy at that point in time is going to be stifled. So when the CBN is trying to do monetary policy, discover that the money outside is the one controlling the banks rather than the banks controlling the system. So this vicious cycle is going to continue until let's just say the authorities put in the right measures to actually account for the informal sector in the country.
Yeah, you know, early part of the year, we were so excited that the inflation rate dropped. But for this month, in fact, last month, January, we saw 21.82, you know, rise from the 21.34 that we saw in December 2022. Now, what do we expect?
Now, I can't accrue to the cash crunch yet. We've not even seen the impact of the cash crunch. That was January. What that was the fuel crisis we had all through January. I mean, all through January, I don't think there was a point where there was no fuel scarcity, but in Lagos, Abuja, and the major cities, Port Harcourt, right? So that was the impact of, I mean, more of rent and fuel prices were the ones that contributed to the inflation. Now, the inflation we're going to see for February would be higher than what we even saw for January, because now this 200 to 1,000, as we draw 1,000 from POS 200, we are going to see it. Those are for the purchase, the producers, right? Those are the producers. They are going to transfer that cost to the consumers, and we're going to be seeing that CPI, which is Consumer Price Index, is going to increase for February. Now, we've not even spoken about the elections. By the time the elections hit, coupled with these 2 weeks of the transfer from the producers and price index to the Consumer Price Index that we've been saying, where the producers add whatever they've gotten from those extra 200 they paid. That's, I think it's about 100,000 pay to 20,000 or something like that. Whatever cost, they are going to transfer it to the general public before the end of the month to get back what they've lost. And we're also going to see the inflation that is going to emanate from the elections. So by the time we are seeing the combination of these two, whatever we saw in January, I'm sorry to say it's going to be a child's play. So January's one was because of the fuel crisis and the rent and issues that come in the early parts of the year with school fees and whatnot. But for this section, it's not when we start seeing the impact of this current crunch that we saw last week and last 2 weeks will be sometime in middle of March and April. And February figures will also reflect it.
Okay. Now, we have been joined by Olusegun Oduyebo, a public affairs analyst and also of Destiny Development Initiative. Good to have you. Good to have you on the program, sir.
It's my pleasure to be here again today. Okay.
How would you, recently the president gave directive to the CBN, of course you're privy to that, the old 200 naira notes should be back in circulation. What is your view about the whole thing? How has it been for you? What has been your experience?
Well, I think one of the major challenges we have here is the fact that the planning is not well done. I feel that you can have a good intention. A policy can actually be intended, the policy might actually be good, but the implementation may be bad. And that's one of the problems we have in Nigeria. The question is, why rush? Britain is changing its currency. They started the processes last year. They are going to end in 2024. Now, this our own arrangement is too short. And when you consider the fact that majority of transaction, majority of the commerce going on in Nigeria is going through the informal sector. And most of the people in the informal sector, not too many of them are bad. Don't forget that. Two, the infrastructures we have are not adequate to handle some of the things that we have.
Okay, Olusegun, there's a lot of noise at the background. Please, we'll really love it if you try to fix that. I will come back to you. But right now, it's time to take a break and listen to Nigerians, what their experiences are like, as put together by Thomas Ogbetere. Don't go away.
Ordinary 200 is very hard. Can you imagine? I'll be standing for like 3 hours just for me to get cash today. I cannot even be able to touch any cash. Look at me, I'm stranded. I cannot even go back to my home. Seriously, things are very difficult.
There's not even single access anywhere. This is the only cash on me now. So after this, what else should I do? You go to the POS, they don't have cash. Look at over here, look at people gathered here. No access to the cash. And the main reason why they are doing this, no one's knows.
My suggestion is that they should print more cash, because suffering of it, this suffering is getting worse. That they keep on promising us that the things is going to change. So, and we are not seeing any changes. It keep on worsening every day.
I believe that government is trying. They are doing something, but they should try more. They try more.
He came around. A young man was standing there. He was talking to people. I said, this is a good environment. The man, brought out himself so low and was talking to the public. I said, sir, can you help me, please? I don't have an ATM card and I want to withdraw my pension. He said, sit down, madam, we'll talk to you. If somebody was shouting at me, he said, don't talk to my mother like that. The way he was talking, people were happy. Do you understand me? So when I went in there, I said, can you give me my ATM card? They said, yes, you can fill your form. I have my ATM card. This is not a long time story. See, I have not collected it since. This ATM card I just collected from the Union Bank right now. Under 10 minutes.
Welcome back. It is still Nigeria today, and we are discussing the update on the new monetary policy. My guests are still with me. Now, you, Dr. Tochukwu, you heard what people are saying there. A lot of them still don't have access to the 200 naira note. Although it's still early, the directive was just given, so we still have time. We still have at least next week. So, what is the reaction to some of the issues there?
Okay, first let me respond to what my colleague earlier said. So with response to the issue of the CBN being in a haste into the policy, right? I don't necessarily defend how they are doing it, but the intention behind doing it is what I need to explain so that people can understand, right? You notice that from, I think, April last year, inflation started trending upwards. They tightened the first time. CBN tightened monetary policy the first time. Monetary policy rate the first time. It's kept increasing second time. And then they discovered that the reason why the monetary policy tightening was not effective or was not as potent as they were expecting was because of the excess money outside the system. So that was more or less a last-minute call to curb the crisis we are currently finding ourselves falling into. So the aim was to actually mop up the money before the elections and be able to at least control it to a reasonable extent before the elections, because every election year comes with inflation. Now, unfortunately, the debate between the Supreme Court, the CBN, made, I said the Supreme Court, the senators and the CBN made the CBN budget point and exceed that 31st. And now exceeding that 31st has actually defeated the purpose original. The original purpose is defeated because right now, once money gets into circulation again, we are going to witness the inflation coupled with the other macroeconomic factors that are contributing. So yes, the reason why it was not really politically inclined, it was more economically inclined, even though it had its own political agenda on it. Now for the 200 naira note, I think right now it's the only safe haven for the economy because people are aggravated, right? People are angry, and justifiably so. I mean, people that depend on cash cannot get cash. I mean, if there was a system that, again, like I was saying, these online systems were adequately functioning, a lot of people will not need to go to the banks. But you see people gathering in the banks because these are not working. So both the bank and your bank are queued up there, and sometimes they don't get this money in 4 hours, 5 hours, and then they have to be working at the same time. So they are going to work, they are not having money, they cannot do transactions, they cannot make payments. Some people cannot even feed. So you go to some shops and you're asking, okay, I want to buy on credit, and nobody is trusting anybody. So people will get angry. And again, I tell you, a larger chunk of the Nigerian populace are actually on the informal sector. Lagos alone, we have 5.5 million people that are in the informal sector out of the 7.5, just Lagos alone. And out of the 200 million in Nigeria, we're having 60.5% that are in the informal sector. So when you have that population, trust me, any chaos that ensues, because it didn't start with that, it started with trickles, right? Back then, in 10 years ago, we were hearing that SMEs were trying to get money from microfinance banks and they couldn't get. It was the informal sector. Then they kept growing. Unemployment kept increasing. The informal sector kept growing. They kept creating their own communities. Now, those trickles have turned to a flood, an ocean, and that ocean is now budging through the system, and we are beginning to feel it. So you're seeing Lagos Ibadan Expressway, they're blocking it, mile 12, and all the other sectors of the economy that are being actually feeling the ripple effect. So right now, the best thing to do is come to a medium exchange, which is like 200 naira, which is in between the lower denominations, because 100 naira and 50 naira is useless. I can't be holding 200 naira, 200,000 in 50 naira notes is useless to me. So 200 naira is the best safe haven to actually allow people engage in transactions, ease up the tension in the economy, and then gradually impute the initiative behind what the CBN intended to achieve. But right now, if they go with that harsh decision they did initially, where they block everywhere, people are going to revolt.
Okay, so the 200 naira note in circulation is a very good move.
It is a good move right now because the crisis is already out of control. It's right out of control.
Now, Olusegun, we're still talking about your experience and what you think about the policy and the release of the 200 naira note in circulation.
Well, sincerely, that is not enough. Let's be honest with ourselves. You are talking about, just like my brother said there, if you look at the population in the informal sector, what's the amount of the 200 naira? We are talking about the fact that there is a need for 1 trillion naira to be in the circulation, and the new mint is not up to that. What is the amount of the 200 naira note that can take care of that? And then you already have tension. The wisdom is to for now, if need be, they should actually bring back everything, return to status quo, just like the Supreme Court said, and allow time. In advanced nation, there's nowhere you do sudden mob up of cash. It's just not right. And the truth is that if this thing continues like this till next week, only God can save us in this nation. We don't really know what can happen. And the average mass on the road is angry. The banks, I mean, I've been to quite a number of banks. I have quite a number of managers at my disposal that we relate with. To me, it looks as if sometimes when the CBN tells us that the money is there, they are not there. How will I have my money in bank and all you tell me that I can have access to cash is maybe 5,000 or 10,000? And you know the worst part of it is that the fuel stations are demanding for cash. People who are selling say they don't want transfer, because when you do some of this transfer, even before this situation, the technology is already at fault because people are buying with false credit alert. They'll tell you they transfer to you, you will see the alert. By the night, the thing would have been reversed and then you can't see the person. So we have not perfected the infrastructure that can actually handle cashless policy. And to do this, it is the average masses that is going to be suffering. I don't think the 200 naira notes, the circulation is enough.
No, Olusegun, you talked about bringing more money into circulation. Don't you think we'll go back to where we are coming from? Because the aim of this policy was to mop up excess money in circulation. Bringing out more money in circulation, are we not going back to the status quo?
The reality is that when you take the wrong step, you don't put the cart before the horse. When you take a wrong step and you find that this step is going to be counterproductive, there's nothing that says you cannot retrace your step. It's only foolishness and to go full RD when you know that something is not working. Anywhere in the world, when you are trying a policy and you find out that it's bringing more hardship to the people, you pause for a while and retrace yourself and re-strategize. This matter requires re-strategizing, because the honest truth is that all that they have been trying is not working. I can assure you that we'll get back to this matter in another 1 or 2 weeks' time, because it still will not solve the problem. The infrastructures are not there. And so if you go that way, we are going to create more problem for ourselves. What we should do is get back to ensure we deal with the structure and the system, make sure we provide the structure. You know, there are some interior. For example, I live in Italy, and in some of the places where we live, there's even no bank. There's no network. How do you tell somebody in Ijeda, somebody in a very local place, that to even get light is difficult? How do you tell them that they should do cashless policy? It's as bad as I'm talking to you now. They buy 1,000 at 200. Is that bad? So you want to tell me that we should continue because we feel that the policy is best? No matter how good the policy is, if you have not created the needed structure for implementation, you trash it and re-strategize.
Now, Dr. Tochukwu, he mentioned some challenges there, but do we keep looking at the challenges and not move forward? Because other nations are moving forward with the cashless policy. I know Sweden, of course, is about becoming totally cashless by March, 24th of March this year. So do we keep looking at the challenges?
Okay, so I totally get where he's coming from, right? And the reality is it can't be reversed. We need to face that fact, just accept that. But moving forward, like you said, to cashless, I think what the federal government should do is ease into it the way they are doing it right now. The truth about it is going back to the old note is never going to happen. We should accept that and no peace, right? But the truth about it is what the federal government has said is that the old 200 naira and the new 200 naira should be running concurrently, right? So those with your old 200 naira notes, keep running it till at least the end of the year, till April 10th. Yes. Now, as far as the issue of allowing the old notes run, the problem is, I can bet you in Nigeria, you can never get a dish that will always suit everybody. There would always be a pushback, no matter how far you go. And the truth about it is this policy was not made because of the money outside, necessarily. It was made because of the inflationary pressures. And when we are talking about the inflationary pressures, you need to understand, if that continued going and we mistakenly hit the 30% range, coming back from that is going to be disastrous, because the estimate of that is you're going to be seeing bread going for as close as 4,500, just a loaf of bread. And I don't think Nigerians are going to take it lightly. Now, as much as you try to please them here, when it gets to that point, there would still be a problem and there will still be a pushback regardless. So sometimes it's just good to close your eye and make decisions, but at the same time while you're doing that, also have empathy, because at the end of the day, the system also contributed to these people's pain. So at the same time, the federal government is trying to find that balance where they are trying to be empathic but also trying to do the right thing. It's like a child. Child goes for immunization. Baby is crying and looking at you. No parent likes to see their child crying. But the truth is, if you listen to just that cry and don't immunize, when he gets paralyzed at the end of the day, he or she is still going to blame you as a parent. So the reality is still the same thing with the economy right now. If we allow these things to go just because we are in pain, I am in pain, everybody's in pain, I must say this, but if we allow it continue and we fester to the point of hitting 35, if anybody told us we'll be in 21% by this year, last year January, we won't believe it. So in less than 1 year we can still hit 35, and at a faster rate, because this is an election year. If we hit that 35 and you'll be seeing a crate of egg going for as much as 7.5, I bet you people are going to come out and be saying, can you imagine the time when egg used to be 2.1, now it's 7.5? It's the truth. Nobody is going to be talking about what they cried for. They will just be crying about the challenges. So sometimes it's just good to get the right thing done. But as much as we are getting the right thing done, we must always be empathic towards the public.
So what are your recommendations in the interim? How can this tension be eased?
That's what I'm saying, the informal sector. You need to look into the informal sector. Okay. Without the government looking at these people, because they are the people indirectly keeping the economy afloat, you need to understand this. We have the computer village and the likes, right? These people need to be looked into, brought into the system, recognized and supported in their own rights, and over time you discover that they begin to trust the system enough to bring their cash into the system and enable it to work right.
Okay, Olusegun, what are your recommendations in the interim? How can this be addressed? You mentioned a lot of challenges.
Yeah, you see, where I differ from my brother is the fact that when you want to make a change, you must create what will make the change, what will accommodate the change. The policy is a good, cashless policy is a good policy. But the question we should ask ourselves is that in the climes where it had been implemented fully, what did they do? When you want to run a cashless economy, it runs on technology. There is no magic to it. These things are not rocket science. So the question we should ask is that, have we expanded our technology infrastructure to the rural communities, to those places where they need it? My brother that is talking here and I, the honest truth is that we are not as affected as most of those people on the road. most of those people in the hinterland. You see, we might sit here and say we are affected. I'm still using data. I'm affected. I'm still talking to you this week. I am telling you, people who cannot eat, I still met some of them today. I still have to go and look for ways to sort out some people. When you see this thing real, you will understand what I'm saying.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's it on Nigeria today. We will not go without appreciating our guests, as we appreciate Dr. Tochukwu Okafor, Senior Lecturer at Bayes University, Abuja, and also an economic analyst. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. And
also Olusegun Uduyebo, a public affairs analyst, also of Destiny Development Initiative. Thank you very much for your time and contributions. And also to our viewer, you've always been there with us. We thank you. And don't forget, Nigeria Today airs weekday at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can watch this and other episodes on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. Once again, thank you for watching. I am your carrier, Clinton. Goodbye.